This video is intended purely for scientific and educational purposes only. I am a professional. I have an NVQ and a BTEC. Do not attempt to recreate anything that you see in the video at home. Thank you. I bought over 100 different king-size rolling papers to put them through their paces and find out which one is the best. Welcome to part 1. I'm Uncle Haggy, and today we're going to be looking at the company Zig Zag. I've got my hands on all the different king-size slim rolling papers that Zig Zag make and sell over here in the UK. So I've got the blues, the silvers, and the unbleached. They also sell some red and green king-size rolling papers, but I didn't get those because over here in the UK, when anyone talks about a king rolling paper, what they really mean is a king-size slim, which is just slightly longer and, well, a little bit slimmer. They are all wood pulp paper with an acacia tree gum sticky. There's 32 leaves per booklet and they're all made in France. The blues are the thickest, coming in at 14.7 grams per square meter. The silvers are slightly thinner at 14 grams and the unbleached are 12 grams per square meter according to their website. As you can most likely tell, the blues and the silvers are bleached and the unbleached are not bleached. I could only get them in packs of 3 and each pack was 99p, therefore making each booklet 33.33 recurring pence. This means that they cost just over a penny per paper, which I'm pretty sure makes it one of, if not the cheapest papers on the market. And you commonly see them in places like Poundland or Pound Stretcher, or where I got these ones from, which was QD, which literally stands for quality discount. But it's over in the US where the company really made its name and have a bit more of a premium image about them. In the counterculture revolution of the late 60s is when the brand became a bit of a cultural icon, with Janis Joplin's band, Big Brother and the Holding Company, using the Zig Zag man logo for their own tour posters, and he became a symbol for the long-haired, pot-smoking hippies of the day. And over the last few decades, many hip-hop artists and rappers would actually mention the brand in their songs.
Said Colt 45 and 2 Zig Zags, baby, that's all we need. 20 Zig Zags out of 1 zip.
With the Suave Man logo continuing to inspire the newer generation of artists, with both the album covers of Eazy-E's Real G-Funk to a Gangsta Beat and Dr. Dre's classic record The Chronic paying homage to it.
Now give me a motherfucking zigzag and we straight.
And you're probably asking, what is a swerve, or a swerve? I actually don't know how to pronounce it.
Zouave.
Well, they were a French military regiment that fought in the Crimean War in the 1850s. Legend has it that a swerve soldier's pipe broke when a bullet struck it, so he used the thin paper that his gunpowder was wrapped in, and he used that as a rolling paper for his tobacco, and therefore, supposedly, giving birth to the modern rolling paper. I say supposedly as the company PayPay state they invented rolling papers back in 1764, and Rizzlers say they invented them even before that in the 1600s. And in fact, the whole Swerve Man story, as romantic as it is, sounds like a whole load of coswallop. It may be true that someone did use their gunpowder wrapper as a rolling paper, but it definitely wasn't the first instance of someone using paper to roll up tobacco, as in Spain in the 1600s, it was widely reported that peasants would go around picking up the cigar butts that the aristocrats would leave on the floor, picking them apart and putting them into newspaper and smoking them, which sounds disgusting, but that predates the Suave Man story by about 250 years. But nevertheless, inspired by this story, 2 brothers, the Braunstein brothers, after building a paper mill just outside of Paris in 1879, made the Suave Man their whole identity, calling their papers the Suave and even using a hand-drawn image of one as their logo. And it was in 1894 that the brothers were the first to interleaf their rolling papers in their packaging, so that if you pulled one out, another one would come out after it, therefore creating the world's first automatic booklet. The design proved so popular that they actually changed their name to Zig Zag, as if you pulled them all out at once, they would all come out as a zigzag. They even won a gold medal at the 1900 Universal Expedition in Paris for this innovation, and it's something that we all take for granted today, as almost every other rolling paper manufacturer does this. After that success, they expanded in the early 20th century, and they made a new manufacturing plant in the Alps, which actually proved to be quite handy, as in World War II, their original factory just outside Paris was destroyed. After the war, the brand was sold to a rival rolling paper company called Job, or J-O-B, or Job, or because it's French it might be a Jobby, and all the production operations were moved to its current location in Péperan in the south of France, where every zigzag is made to this day. Today, both brands are now owned by Republic Technology International, a multinational conglomerate that also own the brands OCB and Swan, with a separate company, Turning Point, handling North American distribution and packaging rights, who have really elevated the Zig Zag name over there, making some cool clothing items with their branding on it that I really want, and starting Zig Zag Studios, a production company focusing on music and moving images. So we have a company of over 100 years experience of making rolling papers. Does that history and knowledge over the last century make them the best papers on the market today? Or are they over the hill, old hat, Grandad's rolling papers. Well, we're going to have a look at them, we're going to test them, and we're going to find out. First off, the looks of the packaging. Now, looks aren't everything, but branding unfortunately seems to be these days. And the packaging is nothing special in my opinion, and I would say it kind of looks a little bit tacky with the print quality being a little lackluster. It's over in the US where they have a lot better packaging in my opinion, and looks a lot more like a premium brand. But over here, I do like the fact that the Zig Zag on the front is slightly embossed, and the fact that they haven't really changed their brand identity for over 100 years. When you open them up, you get these little parts of their history, which I quite like, though the packs that I had only had 3 parts to it. But again, I would say the print quality leaves much to be desired. But looks aren't everything. Let's run a few tests to see whether their discount status here in the UK is justified. First off, we're going to weigh them. I will get the 32 papers out of the packaging and remove anything that aren't the papers and weigh them on my milligram scale. So the blues come in at 2.565 grams. And if we ask ChatGPT nicely enough, that comes in at 16.7 grams per square meter. 2 grams more than what they state, being a 13.7% difference. Next, the silvers, which weigh 2,322 milligrams, which is 15.1 grams per square meter. So just over a gram off what they state, but that makes them 9.47% lighter than the blues. And next, the unbleached, which come in at 1.982 grams, or 12.9 grams per square meter, which is again slightly heavier than what they state, but it's the closest so far, making these 22.7% lighter than the blues and 14.64% lighter than the silvers. Hello, future me here. So it's just occurred to me that maybe when companies give a gram per square meter measurement on their papers, they don't include the weight of the gum in that measurement. It would somewhat make sense that both the unbleached and the silvers were about a gram over from what they state they were, but it doesn't explain why the blues were 2 grams over, unless you need more gum for thicker papers or something. But the silvers aren't that much lighter, so I would be surprised if you need double the amount of gum for them. But anyway, I thought I'd just quickly mention that, as I don't want to just slander companies with incorrect information. On with the video. Next, I will get the 32 papers and measure them using these calipers to see how thick they are. After squeezing the calipers as much as I can, the blues are 1.5 millimeters, the silvers are 1 millimeter less at 1.4 millimeters, or 6.67% thinner than the blues, and the unbleached come in at 1 mil on the dot, which makes them the thinnest, beating the blues by being a third less heavy and the silvers by 28.57%. And now we're going to test how transparent the papers are. I will get my phone light and put it under the paper to see how much light comes through and to show off the watermarks, which help with airflow when smoking. Then I will put my hand underneath the paper to see how opaque or not it is. The blues, unsurprisingly, don't allow much of the light to come through, and you can't really see my hand under the paper. The silvers, being only a little thinner than the blues, allow much more of the light to come through, and you can quite clearly see my hand. It's the unbleached that excel at this test, allowing the most light to come through, and my hands are clearly visible through the paper. They all have the same watermark, which is a large spell-out logo with horizontal lines running through the paper. Watermarks are generally added to help with the airflow while smoking, but I think these ones were added more for marketing than any other reason, as the logos are quite spaced out and don't cover the whole of the paper. So when you roll one up, you don't have a consistent pattern throughout, and therefore it might burn a little unevenly. Then we're going to see how strong they are. Firstly, I will gently tug on the paper lengthways and sideways 6 times each to see if the paper rips. If it does, it's a thin paper, but that also means it's more fragile. And as you can see, none of them rip, so they all pass. Now we'll see how strong the gum is. I will stick one paper to another, leave it for 30 seconds and pull on it 3 times on each side to see if that rips. And again, none of them broke, so they all pass with flying colours. Next, we're going to test the pH of the papers. I will pour a little bit of deionized water into this beaker and we can get a reading using this pH meter, and we get a measurement of 6.81. Then I will put 3 screwed up papers into the beaker of water, let them sit there for a minute, and then we can get another reading to find out if there's any variations from the water's pH. This is to see if there's any chemical residue on the papers left over from the manufacturing process. Ideally, we want to see results as close to 6.81 as possible, but as acacia gum is ever so slightly acidic, a quote-unquote pure paper would come in at a slightly lower number. First off, the blues, and they come in at 7.28, which is nearly half a pH higher than the baseline reading that we got before, being 0.47 more alkali. Now, in the grand scheme of things, that isn't really a lot, but this could possibly suggest that whatever they used to bleach the paper papers could still be lingering on them. Next up, the silvers, which really surprised me, as even though they are bleached too, we get a reading that is way closer and comes in at 6.65, or 0.16 more acidic than the water, and 0.63 less than the blues. And lastly, the unbleached, and as you would have hoped for being a natural paper, they were the best performing with a reading of 6.71, just beating out the silvers by being 0.06 higher and being only 0.11 more acidic than the water. This got me worried that I had a bad reading for the blues, as the number was a lot higher than the others, so I tested them again, but this time I got a slightly higher measurement of 7.33. So there's definitely something on these blues that the other two papers don't have. Now for the burn test. I will stand a single paper on its end and set it on fire to see how long it takes to burn. A faster burn means a thinner paper, which then means a slower burn when you actually smoke it. If you want to know why that is, I suggest watching the Raw Founders Josh Kelserman's video on the matter, where he explains it a lot better than I ever could. I will film it using the slow-mo function on my phone so I can count the frames and get an accurate time, and I will repeat the test 3 times to get an average. So the blues come in at 12.267 seconds, 11.367 seconds, and 12.15 seconds, giving us an average of 11.928 seconds. As you can see, there was a lot of ash left in and out of the tray, as some of it floated out while burning. If we take a closer look at the ash, we can actually see parts of the paper that didn't catch on fire, so that could suggest an uneven burn while smoking. The paper itself left an almost pure white ash, while the acacia gum sticky left behind some darker coloured ash. Next up, the silvers, and the times were 11.133, 11.45 and 10.833 seconds, with the average being 11.139, beating the blues by about 0.8 of a second. And looking at the ash, we can see that the silvers, being only slightly thinner than the blues, virtually leaving nothing behind apart from the gum strips, which the colours were a lot lighter this time compared to the blues being a bit more grey. But like the blues, we can see that some parts of the paper didn't combust, including a big chunk of the sticky, which could mean that the gum isn't evenly applied across the papers. Unsurprisingly, the unbleached were the quickest, with times of 10.65, 11.183 and 10.85 seconds, meaning the average is 10.894, beating the silvers by roughly 1/4 of a second. Like the silvers, there was very little ash left behind apart from the gum strips, and like the last two, we do see some little bits of paper that haven't ignited, but it doesn't seem to be as bad as the blues and the silvers. We also see, like we did with the blues, that the gum left behind some darker coloured ash, and even some black ash. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole debate over black ash, as I don't know enough about the subject to have an opinion, but if that's something you're concerned about, keep that in mind. And last of all, I will roll up a completely legal tobacco king-size rollie with a roach, wink wink, with each of the papers to see how easy they are to roll with, and then I will smoke that completely legal cigarette, wink wink, to see how long they burn for and the taste and any other things that come into my mind when I'm actually rolling with them. Right, here we are, we're outside in a nice little quiet spot, and I didn't actually think it would be this dark when I came out here, so sorry for the poor image quality, but we're just going to have to crack on with it. So this is actually my 3rd Zig Zag blue that I've rolled up with in the last couple of days, and I have to say I'm actually quite impressed with them. So first off, they're actually incredibly easy to roll up with, which isn't surprising for a paper of this thickness, and they have a nice matted feel to them, which is great for someone like me who has slick hands, and sometimes I can't grip the paper very well, but I didn't have that issue whatsoever with these. You can wrap up some really nice uncreased clean cones with this, so if aesthetics is something you're into, then maybe these are the papers for you. From the 3 that I have tried, I haven't had any uneven burn issues whatsoever, so maybe my fear about an uneven burn in the previous sections was a little unjustified. They burn a lot quicker than other papers that I tend to use, but on a cold, wet, miserable day like today, that doesn't actually matter. But if a slow burn rate is important to you, then these probably aren't the papers you want. And though it is burning quicker, it hasn't really affected the taste of the tobacco as much as I thought it would. The theory goes, the slower the burn, the better the taste, as the terpenes inside your cigarette are quite volatile and can burn away before you can taste them. And while I do think that a thinner paper does give you a better taste, I'm still getting a really nice flavour from my cone-shaped king-size rollie with a roach. But that's not to say that the Zig Zag blues don't affect the taste, because there is an ever so slight papery taste while smoking, like up your nose and down your throat, even when you're finished with it. But I expected way more of one, to be honest, so if I was stuck and I only had these papers, I wouldn't be that disappointed. But onto the silvers. So here I am again, I'm in a place with a bit more light, and I've got got a silver on the go right here. Same with the blues. I've actually had a few of these just so I can get a better gauge of them. And again, like the blues, they are quite easy to roll up with. They have that sort of nice matted feel to them. These are just a tiny little bit more difficult to roll up with than the blues were, especially if you want to get that crisp looking cone. But for any experienced roller out there, you shouldn't have any issues. So one thing I did notice is that when I got one of the silvers out of the pack, the gum line on top of it was actually about half as thick as some of the others in the same pack. I'll overlay a photo that I took just so I can show you what I mean. And as you can see, it's about half the width of the very next one that I pulled out. And in fact, the rest of that packet actually followed that pattern where one would have a sticky that was very thin and the next one would have a sticky that was the normal width. Now, it still works as a paper, but it just goes to show, like it did with the burn test, that maybe the gum hasn't been evenly applied across the papers. Well, at least with this pack of silvers it wasn't, as I checked the rest of the packs of silvers and they seem to be fine, and a packet of the blues and the unbleached, and they didn't have this problem either. So maybe just a dodgy pack, but it just goes to show that Zig Zag's quality assurance isn't that good. The less gum you have on a paper means it has less sticking power, which means halfway through smoking, it might unravel, which no one wants. And like I said earlier, that might give you an uneven burn while you're smoking it, which actually has happened quite a few times with these silvers. Nothing a short burst of a lighter couldn't fix, but I had to pay attention to these a lot more than I did with the blues. And while they're only about 10% lighter than the blues when we weighed them up earlier on, I'm actually noticing a lot better, slower burn rate with these papers than the blues. And I just find that quite surprising that such a small change can actually make such a big difference. I also don't know why you can't see me as much as you did before. I mean, it's stood under the exact same fucking light that I was before, and it's pissing me off. But anyway, let's carry on, shall we? With that slower burn rate, you do actually get a bit more of the nuances of the tobacco, wink wink, more than you would with a thicker paper, but there still is an ever so slightly papery taste with these ones. Not as pronounced as it was with the blues, but it's still there. So maybe not a paper for the purists out there, but are the next papers we're going to test, the unbleached, the papers for you? Right, so I'm out here, I've got an unbleached I'm about to spark up, and I've kind of given up with the lighting. This is the best that I can do, so sorry about that. Unlike the blues and the silvers, these are definitely not for the amateur roller out there. Not only are they thinner than the other two papers, which makes the tuck harder, but I also find with almost all unbleached papers that I've ever rolled up with, they have a slight glossy feel to them. It's almost like they're wax coated or something. Though saying that, I think these Zig Zags have been the easiest unbleached rolling papers that I've ever rolled up with, and it was quite refreshing that I didn't have to lick my fingers every 2 seconds just so I can get a good grip on it. But these papers are definitely for the more experienced roller out there. Oddly enough, I expected the same sort of uneven burn issues that we got with the silvers, being that these are lighter and thinner, but with the few that I have had, I haven't had a problem whatsoever. I'm not saying that the silvers had a massive problem in that regard, but I had to micromanage those a lot more than I had with any of the unbleached that I've smoked so far by just keeping a lighter on it and just making sure it burns well. And as these are the thinnest papers that Zig Zag sell over here in the UK, you do get a nice slow burn rate, but I wouldn't say it was that much more noticeable than the silvers. Compared with the blues, and yes, there is quite a big jump with how slower they burn, but with the smokes that I've had so far with the unbleached, I haven't really noticed them burning any slower than the silvers were. But the unbleached papers do beat the other two quite clearly in terms of flavour, where we don't get that papery taste anymore and all you're getting is the contents of your cigarette. So that's me smoking all the papers. Let's go back to the studio where we could wrap things up. We're back in the studio, and instead of giving you some sort of arbitrary score out of 10 or any sort of number based ranking system that really doesn't mean anything, I'm just going to go through each of the pros and cons of the papers so you can make up your own mind at home whether these are the papers for you or not. First off, the pros of the blues, and at number one, fantastic value for money. As I've said before, these are some of the cheapest rolling papers that you can get. I only have one other brand in my collection for these series of videos that were the same price as these Zig Zags, and the next least expensive pack that I've got was at least double the price of these, and most of the packs that I've got are about 4 to 5 times the price of these Zig Zags. Granted, you could buy a shot pack of 50 and then you can make the price more comparable to the Zig Zags, but if you don't want to buy 50 all at once, these are the cheapest papers that you can get here in the UK. 2, they're incredibly easy to roll with. If you're a beginner and you just started to learn how to roll and you don't want to roll with an extremely thick paper like a Rizzler Green for example, then I think these papers are for you. Coupled with the fact that they are really cheap, if you mess one up when you're rolling with it, you can always use another one and not worry too much about it. And 3, Zig Zag are a really well-known name that have been around for over 100 years. That's not to say that they are some high quality papers, but to be around for that long must mean that you're doing something right. I also like the fact that they've got information about their products online, because most other rolling paper companies do not do this. And now the cons, and at number 1, they do have a slight papery taste. Now, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, but it's still there. And at number 2, if you enjoy a nice, long, slow burning smoke, then these aren't the papers for you. But like I previously mentioned in the other section of the video, that wasn't actually such a bad thing for me, because I didn't want to be out in that weather for too long. So if you're in a hurry and you want to have a quick smoke, then these papers are pretty good. 3, the packaging is rather weak, and what I mean by that is if you just whack them in your pocket or you stick them in your bag and you just take them out and about with you, the cardboard isn't very strong, so you can end up damaging the papers or creasing them, which you don't really want. Not the biggest problem in the world, I admit, but it's just something I thought I would mention. Also, on the subject of the packaging, there's no warning leaf in the papers to let you know how much you have left, so if you're not paying attention, you could be left short. Again, not a major issue, and I suppose it makes it just that tiny little bit more eco-friendly, but I think that would just be a nice addition just to have. And lastly, they're not that easy to find. I mean, they're not sold down at your local Bossman's or at the supermarket, or at most head shops actually. You kind of have to go out of your way to get them, like going online or going to the discount shops. And also, you can only get them in packs of 3, meaning you've got to smoke nearly 100 of them before you can get any other paper. If you're anything like me, I kind of like getting different papers at different times just to, you know, spice things up a little bit. Future me here again, so stupidly I forgot to add this to the script. Another con for the blues is the fact that the pH reading was so much higher than the water was, so definitely something left over from the manufacturing process, so that goes against them. And now the pros of the silvers, and like the blues, they were great value for money, they were easy to roll with, though a little bit more difficult than the blues were, and a trusted name, but I will contradict that a little bit when we get to the cons. But unlike the blues, they do have a slow burn rate. Now, not the best in the world, there are definitely better papers out there for that, but they were noticeably better than the blues, and that reflected in the taste being better too. And I will contradict that just now, because like the blues, there was a slight papery taste to them, a lot better than the blues, but it was still present. They're also hard to get, and the packaging again isn't very good. But specifically with the pack of silvers that I had, another con is quality assurance or quality control. This relates to the gum not being evenly applied across the papers. And since then, I've actually checked all the Zig Zags that I have, and there are minor variances in how thick the gum strip is on the papers, but nothing like those silvers. It makes sense that they don't, as Zig Zag are clearly the budget brand of Republic Technologies, and OCB are probably their premium offering, but it just goes to show that these Zig Zags are clearly made to a cost and not a specification. And now for the Unbleached, and the pros were, like the other two, great value for money and a trusted name. They also have a good burn rate, though like I mentioned, they weren't that much better than the silvers, and there are probably some much lower burning papers out there. But with that slow burn rate and the fact they were slightly thinner than the silvers, the flavour from them was the best out of the bunch, and there was no papery taste whatsoever. And now for the cons of the Unbleached, and like the other two, not that easy to find out in the wild, and the packaging is weak, and they are not that easy to roll with. So if you're a beginner, or you know, you're not very confident when rolling, I would avoid these papers for now. But like I said, they were actually probably some of the easiest unbleached papers that I've ever rolled with. And there we have it, that was Zig Zag. In future, I would love to try some of the American Zig Zags, as they have a lot better selection out there than the ones that we can get over here in Europe. What papers should I do next? Are there any ideas out there for any other experiments that we can run on these papers to test them out? Is there anything that I missed in the video that you think I should have added? Anything related to the video, comment below. Please consider giving us a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel, where we got a lot more videos about rolling papers coming up. I've also got another video that you can watch right here, where I test different grind sizes of weed to see if it matters or not. And I've got other ideas for other experiments to do as well. Just finding the time is really, really hard. But yeah, apart from that, I've been Uncle Haggy. Thank you very much for watching, and take it easy.